Okay. All right, listeners, welcome back. You're listening to the Green Bean Podcast with Adrian Green and friends.
And I'm Matt Weatherford, a.k.a. Matty Cupcakes here, just hanging out. Special guest host.
That's right, our guest host for season 3. And our very special guest for today, Mr.
Hi, I'm Courtney Ratliff.
Courtney Ratliff. So happy to have you on the podcast, Courtney. So we don't officially know each other. We've met, but I really don't know a whole bunch about you. But Mr. Matt here has been just like talking to me about you, and he has wonderful things to say about you. So I've heard nothing but good things about you, and I'm very excited to get to know you even more.
Well, likewise, Matt said wonderful things about you, and I've listened to previous episodes, and I'm really excited to do this.
Well, great. All right, so we'll get started, and first of all, I'll let you know what the Green Bean Podcast is. So the Green Bean Podcast is a celebration of growth. So growth in business, craft, personal development, just anything that is worth celebrating, because where we were when we first started, whatever it was we chose or we were passionate about, we were so much further than where we were. And that's definitely something to be celebrated. We may not be where we want to be, but I know there's somewhere out there that's like, man, I really admire what Courtney is doing, and I wish I had the gumption and the courage to move forward like that. And this is just to let them know, hey, it all starts with that first step. You got to start somewhere, and you got to keep going and pushing through the ups and downs to get anywhere. And so I'm very excited to hear your story.
Good deal. Well, I hope I have a story to tell.
Oh, you do. You do.
All right. So, Courtney, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do, and what kind of things are you passionate about?
Oh my gosh. So, first off, what I do right now, I am a family outreach liaison in Midland Independent School District at a wonderful school, Pease Communications and Technology Academy, here in Midland, an elementary school, and it just so happens to be the elementary school that I went to as a child. And so it's great to be able to get back to that campus. Basically, my job is to help parents in whatever they need to be the best parents for their students. So many times, people have challenges. Life is hard. Life is challenging. And being able and affording kids, it's difficult. It's expensive. And we all want the very best for our kids. We all want the very best for every one of our students. And sometimes people need a little help in doing those things. And so my job at my campus, along with all of the other liaisons throughout the district, our job is to help those parents be able to provide for their children in the best way possible so that their kids get the best possible education. I am almost a lifelong Midlander. I was born and raised here in Midland, Texas. Like I said, I went to Pease as a kindergarten through 3rd grade. And then back then, Midland had a cluster system, which in 4th, 5th, and 6th put us at different campuses so that we can experience a different group of people. And so for 4th grade, I went to Henderson Elementary. 5th grade, I went to Emerson Elementary, and then 6th grade was back at Pease. And the Emerson and Henderson schools also traveled. And so you got to develop a friend group that was outside of the people that you grew up with. And so by the time you get to junior high, you knew all these different people. And then you could continue that growth, and it wasn't such a culture shock to all of a sudden you're a 7th grader and you're in with people that you've never seen before. And in most of those cases, people who looked different than you, different nationalities, different races. So you got to experience that a little bit earlier. Something that I wish that we would do more of here in our elementary schools and get back to, because it's so beneficial to people. But throughout the years after that, went to high school at what was then Robert E. Lee High School, where I tried to do all the things. I was really involved in band. Band is kind of my life, and it's still a big part of my life. But Spanish Honor Society, the National Honor Society, PALS, which is Peer Assistance Leadership, which is a program, again, that we once had in the district that I wish that we would bring back. It was really important in teaching young people how to be peer counselors, which, again, for what I do right now today, that was a stepping stone that was the foundation for everything. I learned about confidentiality. I learned what it means to be an effective listener, to give solid advice without criticism, but then also when it's time to be critical, do it in a soft way. And so, so many things, I learned through high school, and that program, again, is one of those things that was just so beneficial to me. Helped me so much, but everything turns back to high school band. And my director, who was one of the most well-known directors in the state of Texas, in Randy Story. And I'm very proud to have been in that band during its heyday. When it was at its absolute top peak level, the band had gone to a Rose Bowl parade, had been given the Southern Flag of Honor. We were invited. I was actually in the performing band that was invited to the Midwest International Band Orchestra Clinic in Chicago, Illinois, which is actually the world's largest such clinic. They invite a select amount of groups from all around the world. I remember very, specifically having the Tokyo Kasai Wind Ensemble was there, and having them listen to our performance. And after the performance, somebody came up to me and my friends, and they were just like, "You're a tuba player. How did you do that? You guys, the way that you release those notes, I've never heard that before." This is a professional adult musician telling that to me as a student, that he was so impressed by the way we did something. It's those moments that stick in your mind for all of your days. And, that's something that was possible through being involved in that program. I went to college at Angelo State University, go Rams, and where I started off as a government major because for whatever reason, I know why. I grew up watching LA Law. And, for you babies, y'all don't know anything about that show, LA Law, because that was a long time ago. But I always wanted to be a lawyer because I always wanted to help people who were, disadvantaged through the law. And so I always wanted to be a lawyer, and everything in my life was pointing in that direction. And so I was a government major at Angelo State. But I was so involved in band, even to the point where after I graduated high school, I was still working the band program here in Midland. And that's how I got to know your co-host, Matt, here. He was a student in the band program. And so I got to know him from freshman, probably I knew him as a junior high kid. Just all the way through there. Another critical part of why during college I switched majors to music ed, because it was my life. I had joined a fraternity, Kappa Kappa Psi, which is the National Honorary Band Fraternity, and we were just so heavily involved in running the music program. But that's another place where I assumed positions of leadership. I was our chapter's president at one point. And within the larger organization, like the national organization, it's broken up into 7 districts. And the district that we're in is the Southwest District, that contains schools and chapters from Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. I was elected twice to that council to represent all of the schools within those states.
Wow.
And so, that was another one of those leadership things that I learned, and it was because of band. And so band was such a huge influence to me. Switching over to music education was it was kind of a no-brainer. However, my heart, my passion has still always been helping people. And so trying to find that intersection of those two things has always been a life challenge, and it's still something that I'm, really working on. So after school, after college, my first year teaching just so happened to be Matt's senior year of high school. And getting to know him and even more, and plus he was a tuba player, which my primary instrument is tuba. So working with them really closely, and just, the type of teacher that I try to be is very hands-on. To me, to reach a student, you have to know more about them than just the subject that you're teaching. So I want to know the kids beyond just what they like in band. I want to know more about the person, their home life. I want to know the things that they enjoy doing outside of music. And so you get to know your kids and everything, and you develop relationships. And so, years and years later, Matt, we find each other, and we've just been we've really become really, really good friends. There are days where he stops by and just get in, and we'll go and drive around, and he'll take me to lunch, and we'll just talk and talk and talk. I think really he wants a free counseling session. So
it's true.
It's true.
I mean, Courtney, I've been knowing you for so many years, and through everything, and you've been really a mentor to me and a lot of other people I do know. And I mean, just to see you go through the years being people's mentor, it makes me proud to call you a friend. And especially with some of the stuff you do now with the city and with the Pride Center and everything else, it's really good to see you stand your ground for people and stuff. And I when he told me he was a government major, by the way, it was not a shocker. Courtney's somebody that will stand up for what's right, not just what's political. And that's what I've always really enjoyed about Courtney. And Courtney not only came into my life as a senior in high school and stuff, in which I really needed him at the time, and on a personal level. And and then I turn around and I start going through things as an adult when my dad died and everything, and Courtney was there. Here's Courtney. And then, we've developed this friendship now, just this bond and everything. And I call Courtney, if I don't hear from Courtney in a month or so, I have to call Courtney and be like, are you alive? Are you doing okay?
He does. He checks on me. I appreciate it. Matt does. He really does check on me. And, that comes from building bonds, which I think is just such an incredible part of life. And it's one of those things that, as I see people develop today, people have become a little bit of loners. We all get in our own little bubble and cocoon in life, and we only focus on ourselves. And we forget that there's a big wide world out there, and we're not the only ones going through whatever situation that we're going through. Other people are going through the same thing, and it's okay to reach out to those other people. It's actually helpful and beneficial to reach out to someone else, because your story can help someone else go through their story.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely believe in that.
I don't think I would have made it through COVID without Courtney. I'm serious. Serious talk, when everybody was so afraid to visit with each other. I think that's when me and Courtney really started reaching out to each other and really started making a difference in each other's lives again. And though I knew him way before COVID, but and we were hanging out. But during COVID, I think we were definitely each other's best friends, because there were days during COVID I was just insane.
It was Matt would sometimes be the only person I saw, physically saw, that wasn't here and wasn't in the house. And so, that's one of those things through COVID. And COVID made us be alone because it forced us to. But, people still found each other, and those celebrations of those connections are really important. They really are.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, for what you do now and what you're passionate about, what are some things, I guess, Matt, what are some things that, some specific examples of either your friendship growing with Courtney or some of the things that he's other things that he's helped you kind of get through, I guess, in this budding relationship, budding friendship?
Oh man, Courtney's so real. You know what I'm saying? Like, like our friend Stephanie. Like Courtney's gonna tell you what's up and everything. Like, I mean, Courtney will be like, Matt, you're wrong. Like, I mean, he's that friend for me. Another huge thing he's a huge advocate for and opened my eyes to two other things is, I wasn't as liberal as I am now before I met Courtney and everything. And a lot of the Black Lives Matter stuff and then the Pride Center and Basin Pride and West Texas Pride and the Pride parades around here, having Pride involved with Juneteenth. I mean, just within the community, like Courtney's involvement there. I mean, he's guided so many kids and parents like that have had a hard time with it, or had a hard time wrapping their minds around it. My generation and before came from a place where it was like the end of the world to be gay or different, and it's not that way anymore. And Courtney's been a pioneer kind of in those groups here in Midland of trying to open people's eyes to that, and he's a role model. He's a role model for kids. He's a role model for adults. Hell, I mean, Courtney's been. There's not a place that Courtney can't go without me, or not without me, but I wouldn't take Courtney with me. There's not one place because I just know he's like for real. Like I just know he's real. You've got these friends that are just not real, and that's not Courtney Ratliff. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. I can call Courtney at 12 o'clock at night. He'll pick up. He might not be happy. He might not be happy with you.
He will get cussed out, but I'll still answer the phone.
He might, or I might wake. I have a knack for calling him during nap time every day. And during the summer, and he's like, "What?"
I'm old and I require a nap time.
I know.
And so somehow, every single time, Matt knows. Like, as soon as I start to fall into that deep sleep, there's the phone call. And I'm the type of person, because I don't like to have like unread emails or missed calls. If I'm able to get to that call, I'm going to answer the call.
Yes.
And because you never know.
Right.
You just never know what's on the other end. And so, it's important for me to take those calls and answer those emails and those messages or whatever it comes up. Matt really, he touched on my involvement through the Pride Center of West Texas. Part of my story that as a young man growing up, I didn't realize that I was gay. And the reason I didn't realize is because there was no example of just a guy who loved sports, who, the image of gay was different then.
Right.
It was that very effeminate man who talked with a lisp. And that's all I grew up thinking gay was.
Right.
And I'm just like, well, that's not me, so I can't possibly. It's like, I think he's really hot, but that I don't know, because I'm not that. So what am I? And it wasn't until later on in life, in those college years, that I realized that gay can be a lot of different things. And so it's important to give that, to provide even that image to students and to younger people, so that they can see that gay is not one thing.
Right.
It's just, it's who you love, it's not what you are.
Right.
So one
think-
of the things I'm involved in now, I'm on the board of directors for the Pride Center of West Texas.
Okay.
The Pride Center of West Texas is an organization that's meant to help enrich the lives of LGBTQ plus members all across West Texas, not just Midland and Odessa, all across West Texas.
All right, and we are gonna take a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk more about the Pride Center. You're listening to the Green Bean Podcast with Adrian Green and friends. All right, welcome back. You're listening to the Green Bean Podcast with Adrian Green and
Maddie Cupcakes.
And Courtney Ratliff.
and Courtney Ratliff. All right, and so before our break, we were talking about the Pride Center. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, the Pride Center of West Texas, the base of it is located in Odessa, our main facility. However, we do outreach for all of West Texas, and we're expanding like every day. We're in the process of working with a group that's in New Mexico right now to bring them into the Pride Center in Guerrero. We've made it a mission to go out into the larger West Texas community. We did a social event in Big Spring. We actually did 2 social events in Big Spring that were, just to let people know that we're here and that we're here for them.
So when did the Pride Center come to be? Like what year?
The Pride Center, I think it started in 2019. I remember the very first meeting. I happened to be there and be involved in it. It might have been 2020.
I remember hearing the Pride Center, and the first time I heard the Pride Center, it's like, oh my gosh, like I didn't realize there was one here in the West Texas area, at least in the Midland, Odessa, Big Spring area. And I was very intrigued by it, and I was just like, oh man, I wonder. I felt like, oh my gosh, like I guess West Texas is a little more progressive than I thought it was.
Well, the gentleman who opened it, Brian and Clint Wilson, a couple. Brian actually grew up in Odessa. He is from here. They moved to Florida and have been really involved. That's where he met his husband, Clint. And they were involved in several different Pride centers there in Florida. And so when Brian and Clint moved back here to West Texas, back to Odessa, it was a mission of his to provide something that he didn't have growing up. And, hearing that mission, that's exactly what I'm about too. I think that it's so critical that as older people, we want to give younger people the things that we didn't have. And one of the things that I didn't have was that support in knowing that I am a gay man, and gay can be different things. And so just providing an opportunity for self-expression. We now have annual events called Basin Pride. This year will be the 5th Basin Pride, I think. And this will be the second time it's in Midland. So we've decided to alternate back and forth. 2 years ago was the very first ever Pride celebration in the city of Midland, Texas, in Midland County. And so, being able to bring that here, first off, was very nerve-wracking because I know, this is also considered the conservative capital of Texas because so much of the funding for the Conservative Party happens right here in Midland, Texas. And so bringing an event like that here was a little scary. But at the same time, I knew it was absolutely necessary.
How was the response for that?
The response was good. It was actually really good. We had about 1,000 people show up.
Oh my gosh, wow.
Insane.
The city of Midland, they didn't give us any drama. We didn't know what to expect from that situation. The Midland Police Department worked with us really well. With few hecklers, like a handful of people, we were able to drown out, and we had a special area for them to go and be mad and angry and outside the gate. And just, y'all go over there, okay? Y'all cute. That's real cute.
Like y'all stand right over here.
Yeah, y'all
we're gonna party over here. Y'all gotta stand over there by the door.
And so, we had that all worked out and everything, and so it was just a beautiful celebration of people. And Last year we were in Odessa at Heritage Park. I'm not sure where our location will be this year. We're still working on that. It is a dream to put it right in the middle of downtown Midland at Centennial Park, because that is the showcase, park area for the city of Midland. And I think that it's very important that Midland, Texas embraces diversity. We have to realize that with all the people that are moving here, everyone's not conservative. Everyone's not straight. We have, there are just so many people that are so different from each other in every way possible. They're moving into West Texas, and it's time for West Texas to realize that and to appreciate it and to embrace it. And that's one of the missions of the Pride Center of West Texas. Whether they want to do it or not, we're going to make them feel welcome, and we're going to push that envelope and make sure that people understand that this is a place for everybody, not just one group of people.
That's awesome. I feel like before I interrupted you, you were talking about something, and then I asked the question, but I don't remember where we were going. Okay. Okay, so been very heavily involved with the Pride Center, and what kind of what has been your most prideful moment? Your moment of that makes you just so proud since working with the Pride Center?
Probably my proudest moment with the Pride Center was that event here in Midland, and bringing Basin Pride here. I was the MC for all the entertainment event, and so I put together the whole entertainment lineup, and I MC'd, and so I was on the mic the whole evening. And at one point in the whole thing, I just stood there and looked out, in the crowd, and just saw all these happy young faces, and seeing them do something that I wasn't able to do at their age, and that's to celebrate being who they are. And I stood there and cried. I'm a super overly emotional guy, and so it was just really emotional to be able to see that level of progress in the city I grew up with. So that was a big moment. That experience with the Pride Center. Another one was, Matt had mentioned, it's not the cross section between being black and being gay is difficult, because I think of all the communities that struggle with homosexuality, the black community struggles the most. And so being embraced as a gay black man is even harder than just being embraced as a gay man. And so I think 3 years ago now, I presented the idea of, hey, why don't we put a float in the Juneteenth parade in Midland? And they were just like, oh yeah, that sounds cool. And before I did it, I talked to the committee that was running the Juneteenth celebration, because I wanted to make sure that everybody was on board, and I wasn't going to put my group into a dangerous situation.
Right.
And so I talked with the committee, and they openly embraced it. They were just like, Courtney, I think that's amazing. I think, if anybody can make this happen, you're the guy. So let's go for it. Let's do it. And as we were going down the street, I didn't know what to expect from the people. But that parade route showed so much love. It was another one of those overwhelming moments where, you felt the love. And then probably the most special moment in that whole parade, there was an elderly black woman who was sitting with her partner. And as we drove by, she turned to her partner and said, I finally see myself in this parade. And, this woman had to be in her 70s. And for her to say that, to have that moment, for as long as that parade's been happening in the city, that she finally saw herself. It was just like, this is why we're doing this. This is it. This is the moment. This is why we're here. And I'm very proud to say that not only did we do the Midland Parade for the third year, this year we also did the Odessa Parade. And, it was not met with the same rainbows and kittens, but at the same time, it was met with a lot of joy. And so we weren't turned away, and they have a contest for best float and everything there, and the Pride Center won third place. And so, we definitely weren't expecting that.
Right.
It came with a cash prize that we in turn donated to the Boys and Girls Club for that area, because we want, the parade was never about us. It's always about the community. So, anything that we got from it, we want to give back to the community, especially to that community who in that moment was embracing us and showing us love. So, as far as, major accomplishments with the Pride Center, those are some of the main things that just instantly stick out in my mind as far as these are impactful moments. This is the why. This is the why that we're doing these things.
So Courtney, I know, as Adrian said, we talk about the highs and lows on this podcast. In dealing with the Pride Center stuff, because I know we're going to get some lows here in a minute, but with the other stuff, but with the Pride Center stuff, getting in the parade, and kind of spreading that. Have you guys? Have you personally ran up against a lot of difficulty in that, or has there ever been just tons of outrage?
Not necessarily the tons of outrage, but there are always going to be people who don't understand. And, I don't necessarily equate it as hate, but I think it's a lack of understanding. And there was definitely, I had to have some conversations after the parade with different community leaders who didn't understand why I was doing it. And, then, to me, I try to run my world based on logic. I try not to make a lot of emotional decisions. That was one of the things that I had a boss. For 12 years of my life, I lived in Dallas, and I got out of education. I was actually in corporate America, and for 7 of those 12 years, I worked for Blockbuster in the corporate offices there. And up until we shut the whole company, everybody knows about the story of Blockbuster. And so I was in the process, I was there until the very end, till the ship sank. I'm riding the ship. I'm trying to shovel water out the boat.
Just
the whole time. Just, please, let's stay alive. So, but anyway, during that process, I had a boss who told me, Courtney, because he would see me struggle with making decisions because I would get so emotionally involved in something. And he said, Courtney, you have to take the emotion out of decision making and just make a logical decision. And from that point on, that's what I try to do. And so if I can't logically justify doing something, more than likely I'm not going to do it. And so that's how I approach those negative people who were like, why are you doing this? Because logically, people need to be able to see themselves. It's no different than black kids succeeding more when they've had a black teacher, because they see themselves in that role. And so those type of things are critical to development. And so that's that was the logic I was able to give to that person. I said, you can't deny that we have gay people in our community. That's just fact. And so for us to provide them the optics to say, yes, we exist, this is a group that can help you, that this is a group of people who are like you, who you can talk to. That provided the why. And so while it was a challenge, that was probably the least of any of the challenges that I've been through and the different things that I've gone through.
Okay, and so we are going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll talk more. We'll dive into some of the challenges that you face, and also talk about your podcast that you have. And so you're listening to the Green Bean Podcast with Adrian and friends.
Don't turn it off now.
Oh man, that's the question. Just to the alumni of the school, is it time for us to change the name of our school? You know, we know what it is, and even this was before, you know, before we really got into the history of why it became Robert E. Lee. Just the fact that it was Robert E. Lee was enough. And so it was, you know, is it time to change the name of the school? And the overwhelming response was yes. Although there were definitely those within that group, within that alumni group, that were just like, you know, hell no, leave it the way it is. This is not the time.
They really came out of the woodwork on us.
Yeah.
Didn't they?
Absolutely.
I mean, it seemed like every other day we were having a conversation about somebody. I mean, and I'm not talking like just anger. I'm talking about threats. I'm talking about almost like, I mean, 1960s burning crosses in Courtney's front yard. Almost.
Yeah, it was. I mean, so
like, I know where you live type stuff.
Right. So as you know, as it went along, I was actually going to wait to bring it up to the school board. That year was an election year, and I wanted to make sure that we had the right votes, you know, the right people on the school board to be able to vote and make that name change, because I wasn't sold on the people that were on the school board at that time. I didn't believe in them. I didn't believe that they were the ones that could get this done. And so I wanted to wait, but I was approached by other people that were just like, no, the time is right now. Do this right now. It was the third attempt to change the name. And so I talked to people who were in charge of the previous attempts, because I wanted to know what went wrong. Well, the last time it had been attempted which was just 3 years prior to my attempt, was it was being done by alumni of the school, but they didn't live in Midland. And so the school board used the excuse, well, this isn't being driven by the people in Midland. You don't live here. You don't represent the area anymore. We're not going to follow it. Go sit down.
Right.
So, I took that information and I said, okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to launch a petition. And so a group of friends that I really trusted from all areas, and they were not even living here in Midland, but I was the one who lived here. So I had to be the face of this whole movement. But I had so much help from a lot of different people. They drafted the petition and put the petition out there, and within the first 2 weeks it garnered 3,000 signatures. The petition for the time before that, the 3 years prior, had only gotten, over its lifetime, had gotten like 1,500 signatures. So we doubled the number of signatures in just 2 weeks.
Wow.
And presented the whole idea to the school board. Well, at the next school board meeting, the school board president said, we're not going to talk about this. They didn't even put it on the agenda for discussion.
Oh, wow.
So I used my 3 minutes in open forum, which happens every school board meeting. There's a public forum section where you sign up to speak and you get 3 minutes to say whatever you need to say. I used my 3 minutes to absolutely, I went off. I really went off. I went off on the school board president for not taking it seriously. I went off on the 2, at the time, black members of the school board for not backing me up on this matter. And just and I let it be known that I am not going to be silent. And as long as it takes, I am standing right here in your city. And I told them, I said, I know that the last time this came up, the excuse that you made, and the only excuse we had, was it was not being led by someone who was here in the city. I'm standing right here in front of you, and I'm not going anywhere. So we're going to deal with this. And, after that point, it really blew up. All media got involved. I was doing interviews on every station. I was on the news a lot. And but that put the target on me. I didn't back down from it. I let everyone know that, this is my project and we're going to get this done. And And so, that's how I ended up actually meeting my co-host of my podcast that I have called Wait What? Damien Crawford. He was one of the people, in that time he was like 23. But he was like a social media just whiz kid. And so he really helped me out on the social media side of making sure that the message was out there and that, we were able to garner more support. Well, a month later, so time goes by, I'm asking people who, because of the we use the Move On platform to host petition. And I was able to email every single one of the people who signed the petition. So I used that to give them instruction on the next steps. We completely bombarded the school board's emails. They were getting 1,000 emails, literally 1,000 emails a day saying to change the name. So much so that it no longer could be swept up. They had to talk about it. I got the city's government because I pointed out that Midland is a diverse city. We're growing exponentially. Our oil companies are growing, and they need to bring in employees from not just here to run the offices. And those employees don't want to bring their kids to a school district that has a Robert E. Lee High School. Mm-hmm. They understand that name means something for a reason. And so that's the time when we really got into the background and started learning about, that 1960s and everything that was going on in that time period and the why it was Robert E. Lee. People told, older generations of people started telling their story. And I mean, it just picked up so much steam so fast. And it just made people so hateful. But the hate didn't come. So a month later, the July school board, that was at the June school board when they didn't want to talk about it at all. The July school board, it was on the docket for a vote. Things changed very quickly within a month's period. Just so happened, I had gotten COVID that week and was in the hospital.
Oh no!
So weak that I could barely speak. And so the final night of the school board meeting, like that morning, I went to the hospital. And so I put out a message that, guys, I'm in the hospital with COVID. I can hardly speak. I need for you guys to get this over the goal line. This is the moment. There were, I think, 27 speakers who signed up to speak on behalf of the name change that night, with only 3 that were like, don't change the name. Like, the people who supported it really stepped up to the plate. And I remember being in my hospital room and just crying the entire time. And the nurses are just like, the first time the nurse came in, and I was just like, I'm not in pain, I'm not hurting. These are tears of joy. Right. So leave me alone, let me do what I'm doing.
Oh, wow.
But, I mean, I just remember that whole time and everything, for instance, in 2003 when I graduated, we were still waving a rebel flag at football games. I mean, just openly. We were still, we still had this mentality. And I mean, when we were doing the name change, I remember a friend of mine, Roger Conley, and the people that went to Dallas and stuff and went to different universities away from here. And they were like, you graduated from Robert E. Lee? How did that make you feel? Like, you're black. Like, you went to Robert E. Lee? I mean, it was a thing. And, like, you don't realize it growing up until you graduate and move away from here that, like, it's not supposed to be this way.
Yeah. Even as a black student, remember, I told you I was Mr. Lee High School. I mean, I did all the things. I represented the school in every way I possibly could. But I was representing, a negative image that I didn't even realize it because we were so brainwashed into thinking that there was nothing wrong with a school being named Robert E. Lee High School. Wow. There was nothing wrong with playing Dixie.
I remember
It's all
when
fine.
we went to. You remember marching the inauguration, and we played. We didn't play Dixie and all that stuff, but we played.
There was a medley. It was called the Texas Medley, and it had all these different spirit songs. Well, in one of it was this one little blurb of Dixie. This one little bar of Dixie.
Yes, we had to cut it.
That we could, it's not so. It was very clear that people here knew it was wrong. They knew that what we were doing in this city was wrong outwardly. They knew it. And so whenever you go to official functions, that band marched in the inaugural parade and Rose Bowl and all these things, they didn't do the Dixie part.
Yeah, they weren't having it.
They weren't having
The
it.
people putting it on weren't having it, and I remember having to learn different parts and stuff like that in band, and it's just like, why is it, I guess growing up, I mean, from being, a white kid raised in Midland, Odessa, and raised, fairly right, on the right, it was kind of like, oh, I guess this is just the way it's going to be, is, what we don't talk about, it doesn't exist. And then I become an adult and meet Courtney and get involved, a little bit involved in the name change stuff and talking with Courtney and stuff like that. And, some of the alumni and their words and stuff like that. Like, I had people coming up to me at my daughter's gymnastics in Big Spring going, I don't understand it. I just don't understand it. How can I look as conservative, as
So they didn't
right,
understand
why we changed the name.
Why I changed the name? No.
Why are we coming after the name of this high school? And I just was just like, can you not answer that for yourself? It's in the name, like the Confederate general's name.
People honestly and truthfully just did not understand, because they were, for one thing, we don't teach history very, very well here in the state of Texas.
No.
And it's only getting worse, because slavery was not beneficial. I don't care who thinks it is. I'm sorry, Ron DeSantos. Slavery was not beneficial. And so, but that's the mentality that a lot of people have, to try and justify the why that their ancestors did it,
Right.
and why they grew up thinking that separate and equal was okay. Because the people who were fighting it were the people who did grow up in that era of a colored only water fountain and a white only water fountain. I can sit at this counter, but you can't sit at this counter.
Yes.
Right.
And so for those people who grew up with that mentality, sure, Robert E. Lee was just fine. Yeah, what's the big deal?
So when people were, asking, why are you coming after Robert E. Lee name over, was one of the things they brought up was the states' rights. It's states' rights. That's what the war was about.
Yeah, and then you go into the history and say, I want you to actually go back and read the Articles of Secession, because in every single one of them, it says the states' rights. Yes, the states' rights to do what? Own slaves. Every single one of the Articles of Secession written by those states that joined the Confederacy mentioned that the reason they're leaving is because they wanted to own slaves. Every single one of them. It was very clear that the Civil War was about slavery. It was about nothing else but slavery.
It feels very much like when people quote the Bible and they just pick
their
things
favorite
that fit
part.
their-
Their favorite parts, and then they use the excuse of, but not my memories.
Oh.
Not my memories.
Not my
I remember
memories.
there was this one man who said that he didn't want to change the name because he lost his virginity on the campus.
Yes,
and he
I
didn't
remember
want
that.
and he didn't.
Yes.
And so that school is important to him, and he wasn't about changing the name of it. And the man was old. He was ancient.
Dude, this
I'm
was
just
like
are you
84.
serious?
I'm as old as this guy has been graduating from high school.
I'm just like, are you really serious? You want us to keep the name because you lost your virginity there, and you think that's important?
By the pole vaulting pit.
I'm
if
just,
I'm
by
not
the pole vaulting pit. You're exactly right.
By the
Yes.
pole vaulting.
I mean, it was ridiculous,
Wow, and that was
that's
after
probably a
all,
lie too, but
right?
After all these years, that was his highlight. That's the number one
Yes.
thing that kept him going day
This is what
after
you
day
stood
was that
on.
memory.
Yes, and so you know, and it was, so there were so many people who didn't think that the school board would ever take action. And so when they finally did, and they did vote 6-1 to change the name, that's when everybody was just like, this is really happening. And so they got extra mad. And
Yes.
that's really when the death threats and all that kind of, that's when it started. Because the school board actually did vote. They actually did make the change.
I mean, it
And
went
now
deep.
people were just like losing their minds about the whole thing. And during all of that is probably at the very beginning of the super negative part, because people were threatening not only my life, which I was never scared about that part, but they were affecting my livelihood. I've been a consultant with another band program in the area, and people were calling that school to tell them bad things about me, to make up bad things about me, just so that I would get fired. And it crushed me. That's the part that crushed me, because I'm just like, you are trying to take away my passion, which is working with kids and making kids into better people. All over this. This is your reason to save the name of a school that should have never been named what it's named in the first place.
Wow.
I mean, the maximum amount of hate. I mean, they came after Courtney's LGBTQs plus
They came after the Pride. They came after the Pride Center.
They came after everything.
Anything that was associated with me.
Why is he gay and dealing with students? You know, I mean, everything came out of the woodwork. All the hate. All the hate.
And so, you know, for a lot of people, that amount of negativity would crush them. But when you are doing the work and you know that it's necessary, you know that it's right, you have to press on anyway. And I guess that's the overall message that, you know, especially as I look back and reflect on the whole thing, the overall message there is, I was doing the right thing. It was the right thing for the city. It was the right thing for the current students, because one of the things, while my diploma will never change, it will always say Robert E. Lee High School, the diplomas now say Legacy High School. And they don't have to wear that albatross anymore. They don't have to justify the name of their school to their peers as adults. You know, they don't have to do that anymore. And to me, that was one of the most important parts of it. Because one of the, you know, the old people were arguing, well, it's not going to change anything for you. You're not going to get it. I'm just like, I know. It's not about me. Believe it or not, I'm not fighting for me. I'm fighting for our future.
And you know, from coming from a place like, I generally on the last times that they tried to change the name and everything, like I was genuinely against it before. And until like I started talking with Courtney about it, and until I like really realized what students went through, and like came to the conclusion no student should have to ever do that. No student should be ashamed of where they go to school. No student should be ashamed of the color of their skin, their sexuality, or anything else. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, no student should be like dealing with that in their education.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really kind of where I came to. Plus all the Civil War, you know, racism and stuff. You know, that's really where I came to. Like, that was the nail in the coffin for me. Was like, if kids have to go to school and feel ashamed of where they go to school, then that's a problem. That's an issue.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, again, the message there is doing the right thing is often hard. When you're trying to do something that's beneficial and worthwhile, you're going to be met with adversity. People are going to come after you. People are going to try and attack your goodwill. But when you're doing the right thing, you have to do it anyway. You have to keep going. You have to. Sometimes that means that you have to put your personal self to the side, knowing that ultimately you're doing the right thing. And those are character things. Those are things that, you know, you have to dig deep within yourself to say, I can do this because this needs to be done. And if I don't do it, who the hell is?
Wow. That's very well said. Thank you for joining us for the podcast. We're going to go into overtime because we still need to talk about the podcast.
Right. Sorry, I talk a lot. I'm sorry.
It is all great information. I'm so thrilled with how this interview has been going, and thank you so much for sharing all that. So we're going to take another quick break, and then when we come back, we'll get more into Courtney's podcast and any other plans he has coming up. You're listening to the Green Bean Podcast with Adrian and friends.
I'm so wordy.
This is
why my podcast goes forever and forever.
You can always look at me and tell me to shut up, by the way, because we can talk. Like, we'll keep going.
I'm a talker.
I've been on the front porch.
There we go.
Put on the red light.
All right, welcome back. You're listening to the Green Bean Podcast with Adrian Green and
Maddie Cupcakes.
And
Courtney Ratliff.
And
he kills me every time. I'm sorry.
And Courtney Ratliff. All right, Courtney. So tell us about the podcast that you and Damien have.
All right. So my good friend Damien Crawford, who I mentioned before, that I met during all the process, super whiz kid, love that kid. He and I have a podcast called Wait What? And the reason why we call it Wait What is because we tend to say things that, as we're listening to it, we're like, wait, what did they just say? And it makes you have to come and go back and listen to it again. And so a lot of the content is, we talk about. A lot of people have said I'm the liberal balance to like the conservative talk shows here in West Texas, and that I just give a different perspective of things that people are talking about. And we try to keep it light, we try to keep it funny, but it's also serious, and we cover some really serious topics. We've been at it for a little while. You can find the Wait What podcast on Apple Music and Spotify. And we're like 60, we're getting close to 60 episodes.
Wow. And do you have anything, any projects or anything, events that you have coming up that you want to kind of show some love for? This will be aired in September.
In September? Let me think. I know I'm going to do some other podcasts with some other people. I have one scheduled to record pretty soon. No real big projects except for Basin Pride is coming up once again. It'll be this year in April. And again, it will be here in Midland. I'm not sure of the location because we haven't determined that yet, but look for Basin Pride 2024 happening here in Midland, Texas, and I'm really excited about that.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It has been a real honor to get to interview you and hear your story and learn more about the neighboring city, the Big Spring, here in Midland.
Yes.
And thank you so much for agreeing to talk with us.
Thank you for having me. I love your show. Keep up the good work. Keep podcasting. It's great stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you for being my friend.
Thank you for being my friend.
I know it's challenging.
All right. Well, thank you. Y'all have been listening to the Green Bean Podcast with Adrian Green and friends. And you can listen to seasons 1 and 2 on Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, and more. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. All right. And that's it.
Right. Good show.
Thank you.
It's all a good show. Oh, man. Whew.